time.
Yeah. We're on now, though. This is the business culture of agriculture. My name is Andy Junkin, and with me tonight is my fiance Bernadette Fox and Lem Lewis. Both of them better looking than I am for sure. And Lem Lewis is from Central Texas, and he's got the ranchbroker.com as the name of his website. Lem, tell us about where you're from and what kind of agriculture you deal with in your region.
Hey, Andy, first of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure. I enjoy watching you, and thanks for having me. I'm in Central Texas. I grew up ranching in the Texas Hill Country in a little old town called Lakey. And my great-grandfather purchased his first piece of dirt there in 1929 and built on it through the Depression. And it's a great place to grow up. And I'm a fourth generation Texas rancher. I started selling ranches back around 2003. And it's a pleasure to try to help other people with their buying or selling of Texas ranch land.
Okay. Can you tell us about your realty business and what makes you different from the rest?
We dress as clowns. No, I'm kidding. We focus primarily on ranch land. So a lot of companies in our market area, they'll sell everything, right? Houses, commercial, small lots, and we will, and we have over the years, especially if it's a long time relationship. You know, we try to take care of them, but our primary focus are large tracts of ranching land or farmland, primarily in Central Texas, but we do work in South Texas, West Texas, even in the Panhandle. So our main thing, I guess, that sets us apart is that we've always been extremely successful at being creative and getting transactions done that were complicated or that we really ran into a problem.
Give us an example of like how you're creative like that.
A good example of that is a ranch I had in Bandera County in Central Texas, where we had about 1,500 acres, and we took 3 different buyers into that ranch because they needed smaller tracts of land than that. It had a difficult layout to be sold as one piece, the way it was shaped, and it had a public road through the middle of it, and kind of wasn't ideal as one piece. So we took 3 buyers in there and did simultaneous closings on that. So we had 3 different surveys and 3 different title policies, and try to get all the timing together and all the different dynamics, all the different personalities. It's not an easy job, and those type of transactions are extremely interesting, although they're difficult. But I'm proud we get a lot of deals like that done.
Tell us about legal pitfalls you quite often see that buyers would never anticipate, and how does a realtor really make a difference in helping produce farmers just kind of avoid those pitfalls?
Well, you know, definitely from the buyer's side, a lot of issues that you run into are what I call title issues, and they fall under, you know, when you're doing research for the title, you may run into easement issues, where maybe there's an old easement on a ranch that no one's aware of. There's mineral reservations, timber reservations. I sold a ranch one time where we found out there was a guy that had the right to hunt that ranch from back in like the 40s or something, and it had high-end genetic whitetail on it that were probably worth $200,000 a piece. So the seller wasn't even aware. So those are issues that we run into sometimes, and we have to find solutions to get around those in order to get the buyer comfortable with what he's buying, of course.
And when you what's the importance of financing and getting pre-approval for a young producer if he's going out and or he or she is going out and purchasing a tract of land?
Well, I think that that's a good question, Andy, and I think that pre-approval is critical. I mean, financing in general is critical. Unfortunately, we can't all pay cash for something, and cash is king. And so if you're not in that situation, you need to have your financing lined out ahead of time, because there's going to be situations where moving quickly is going to be to your advantage, especially if you're in a tough market. And if you do that ahead of time, you're in such a better position. It's pretty common for a lot of people to go shopping and then try to go get the money. And it really should be the opposite. You should have your financing lined out ahead of time.
Yeah. Like I had a farm family. They were in their late 60s, and they made, I sat down with them for lunch. And in that lunch, they decided that they were going to sell. I helped them weigh the pros and cons. Like that's what I'm often paid to help farm families, just kind of talk, and often with a husband and wife, to really communicate as to what they really want. And, they decided by 1 o'clock that they were certain that they wanted to sell. And I walked down the road and let a farmer know that the farm was actually for sale. And he called, and they sat down at 7 o'clock that night. And because he had always at the beginning of the year got pre-approval for purchasing farms, he knew that he could spend X amount of dollars. He got a contract written by the lawyer for any to be able to purchase that property. So he got the lawyer. He got the farmer just to basically put in the blank line as to how much they wanted to sell that farm for, and he was able to write a check, and basically cleared in 2 days. And I think that it's pretty key to. It's probably been, that was such a hot neighborhood where they were selling land at $25,000 an acre. They were actually able to buy that farm, I think, around $20,000 an acre. And so I think it's really important for a farmer to, if you are serious about getting land in a very hot area, to be ready. Now, question I got for you, Len, you often see farmers, sellers of land that just simply do not want their property listed, and they want to keep it confidential, and only for you to deal with selected buyers. The question broke up a little bit there for me on the feed. Oh, sorry.
I apologize, but I think what you were asking was about the importance of dealing with a real estate professional because of the potential for finding properties that are not actually on the open market. Am I correct of what you're asking?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I was saying. I was saying, how important is it for a young farmer to work through a realtor to recognize properties and be introduced to properties that he would never know were being listed. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a great question, and I get that all the time. I get a lot of people, especially if the seller is maybe in a public, has a public profile, and he doesn't want to be out there on the open market. They'll contact me and tell me that they want to sell, but they don't want to market. And so as a buyer who's looking for something out there in the market, I think it's critical to find a real estate professional in your market area who has their finger on the pulse of what's happening, because not only because of those hidden listings, those pocket listings, but just also because they have a better understanding. I mean, it's what we do, right? I mean, we all have our niche, and a real estate landman in your area, in your market area where you're searching, is going to have a better understanding of market values than anybody else. And so if there's a particular area that a buyer wants to be in, I think it's critical to hire a real estate professional and let them go to work for you.
We have never talked about this before, Lem, but is it in your part of Texas? Are there many young guys using pension money in a non-relative financing in order to be able to purchase tracts of land that they can either then rent or, you know, get a long-term mortgage on the property at a higher interest rate?
I have done a few deals like that. It's not extremely common, but there's a few. There's actually some programs available where someone can take, you know, like retirement money and roll it into a self-directed IRA and purchase property through that, where it's tax-free or tax-deferred rather than, you know, it'd be tax-deferred till they retired. So definitely something that can be done in our market area. I've done probably 2 of those over my career. It's not super common, but there's a few.
Gotcha. We see that as a growing trend in different regions across North America. Now, if you're in a multi-person partnership, how critical is it to get everybody on the same page for the vision, with a common vision of what everybody wants to do?
I'd say it has to be your number one priority, because if everybody's not on the same page when it comes to selling a piece of property, it's going to end badly for everybody. I mean, I've seen court cases and family feuds, and it just, nobody wins, right? Especially if you go to court, nobody wins but the attorneys. So I think it's critical that everyone gets on the same page. And my experience has been that if there's a third party, an objective party like myself, or especially, you know, the position that you're in, that's really kind of the service that you offer, makes a huge difference. A lot of people will listen to an objective person where he might be saying the exact same thing that a family member's been saying, but they don't have that that family dynamic and that tension to, you know, plug their ears, if you will. So
how do you get everybody to focus on what matters? What do you focus everybody on?
I think trying to get everybody to take a step back and look at what their priorities are and their end goals, and then formulating a plan, you know, to where it's a little more business-like than emotional, and that helped a lot of people. And there's always a solution to a problem. So if you can calm people down and get people communicating and find out what everybody's goal is, then you can usually formulate a solution to that.
And I think the key is for everybody to understand what's going to make them happy in 5 years' time.
Right.
You know? What are critical philosophies you got to have in order to be a successful buyer?
I think that you really need to concentrate on research and or lean on your real estate professional, because like we've already mentioned, you know, I think knowing your product and knowing your market before you buy is critical, especially if you want a good deal. I think that's key. So I think for a buyer who's not that educated, educate yourself. If you can't or don't want to, then seek to provide the advice of a professional who already has that experience and lean on them for their advice.
And if you're a seller, how do you make the decision to whether or not to sell? Is there any suggestions you have to help farm families make that decision? You know, do we want to move to town, or do we want to stay on the ranch? How do you help that rancher really understand what he wants to do in those? I mean, because it's a huge decision for a lot of guys and ladies.
Yeah, that's a really tough decision, especially if the family's had the ranch for a while, because there's so much sentimental value, so many emotions tied to that. I mean, you've got memories. I mean, our human nature is that we just don't want to let go of that kind of stuff. And even if we know that it's time to change, it is hard to make that decision. And so I try to just help people to, like I said, step back, to, take a minute to look at facts, try to kind of categorize it in a little more of a business perspective and say, hey, look, this is a business that you're running, right? It's not a farm. It's a family business, and you've got to make it a business decision. And a lot of times it'll help people process slowly. Usually it takes some time. They process through it and make the choice that's best for them and their family.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, they put their whole sense of identity into that piece of land. I know a lot of men that would rather have a prostate removed than for them to be taken off the ranch. And if that's the case, that's who they are. That's fantastic. But a lot of people don't understand the priorities, and it's pretty critical to get that in order. Lem, how does folks get a hold of you?
The easiest thing to do is theranchbroker.com. Everything's there. I've got a link to my podcast, which is the Ranchcast. We focus on interviewing ranching families and individuals that are in the ranching and farming lifestyle. We try to provide value for people out there like you're doing. And
I think I'm looking forward to actually watching your show. And Lem, I really appreciate that. And we'll talk to you. Talk to you again probably later in the year, and maybe I can be on your show and help you with what you're doing there. I'm really interested. So thanks very much for your time. I know that you're a sought after speaker across several states, and your advice is well warranted. So my name's Andy Junkin. This has been Lem Lewis from theranchbroker.com. This is my fiance Bernadette Fox. She has had this,
I had to bring it in.
She has had this
because he's on a diet.
Yeah,
so I brought it in to
I can't even
smell the bread.
I can't. I've been sitting there looking at it. So, anyways, that's great talking to you, Lem, and let's keep in touch. Okay.